for Dr. J.
So let's talk about something.
Emerson?
Oh, yeah, Emerson. We were going to talk about Emerson.
I don't think you can talk about Emerson without talking about Thoreau and how much you hate them both.
Oh, I do.
But Whitman's okay.
Well, yeah, Whitman's okay. I mean,
He's not a hypocrite.
it's Whitman. No, he is not a hypocrite.
Whitman just is out for the world to see.
Whitman didn't say, I'm gay, but you can't be gay.
I'm gay. Welcome aboard.
Yeah.
That's Whitman.
Yeah, that's our Whitman. There's a sitcom for you. That's our Whitman.
Uncle Walt.
Yeah, Uncle Walt.
Isn't that what Robin Williams calls him in
Yeah.
Uncle Walt?
Yeah, that's where I got it from. I always call him Uncle Walt too because that's me. Uncle Walt.
That's a great movie.
Yeah.
It's one of the movies that makes you want to teach.
Was it Last of the Mohican Poets or whatever?
I think I'm having a minor stroke. Can't feel my face on the left side.
Come on, that was funny.
I showed Victor a poem by this guy named Clark Coolidge, he's really dense and it just looks like word salad, right?
Yeah.
And Victor responded with, "I can't tell if it's a stroke of genius or a garden variety stroke."
Oh, I love it. It's good stuff.
Well, what's to say about Emerson? I mean, we're talking about literature. This could go on for hours.
Yeah, okay, so Emerson. Oh, shoot, it's my phone.
This one was your idea.
Well, I said we could talk about it. I didn't say we
fine
had
with it.
to.
I'm fine with an unscripted conversation, to be honest, but Emerson seems like a good place to start.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I guess, so here's what we can do. We can talk about why I hate him.
That would be a couple hours.
No, I think I can wrap it up in one word: hypocrite, or 3 words: snake oil salesman,
Or flim flam man.
flim flam. Yeah, you want to talk about a flip flopper?
Not flip flop, flim flam.
Mm-hmm.
He also is a flip flopper. How is he a snake oil salesman?
How's he a snake?
Yes.
Let me read his exact words. Let me pull that up on Kindle real quick.
Does he actually say, "I'm a snake oil salesman"?
No, he didn't. No, you know that.
And what did his friends call him?
Waldo. That's what I'm saying. So I gotta tell the joke. Margaret Fuller, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Henry David Thoreau sitting around. Where's Waldo? I'm sorry, I think that's funny.
Oh, it's a fucking riot.
It is. It's a fucking riot. Oh my god.
Hootenanny.
Yeah. You know, if I was worried about people seeing this, I would have been more prepared.
I think the unscripted nature of it's good.
All right. So this is why I say he is a snake oil salesman. This is from Self-Reliance. Okay. This is why I've always had a beef with him.
This one bit.
Yeah. I tell thee, thou foolish philanthropist, that I grudge the dollar, the dime, the cent I give to such men as do not belong to me, and to whom I do not belong. There's a class of persons to whom by all spiritual affinity I am bought and sold. For them I will go to prison if need be, but your miscellaneous popular charities, the education at college of fools, the building of meeting houses to the vain end to which many now stand, aims to sots, I did that this morning. Alms to sots and the thousandfold relief societies, though I confess with shame, I sometimes succumb and give the dollar. It is a wicked dollar, which by and by I shall have the manhood to withhold. And my problem with all of this is that he would go and give speeches and take money for his speeches and go on to the next university to give the same speech. Again, let me read the very beginning of this. I tell thee, thou foolish philanthropist, that I grudge the dollar, the dime, the cent. He grudges it.
Except the ones you pay him.
Except the ones he takes from you.
Well, the word you used this morning was aristocrat. I don't think that's inaccurate.
Yeah, he is an aristocrat. Well, he was born into money.
Yeah.
What would be the equivalent of our junior year of college? When he got done with his junior year, his parents told him, "Go travel before you do your senior year." So he did. He traveled for 2.5 years.
And stole everything from Wordsworth.
Yep. I wouldn't say he stole it. He took it and He did what Taco Bell did. He took it and Americanized it.
Okay, so we're comparing Waldo Emerson to Taco Bell. I don't know what to say to that. I'm not sure.
Where's Waldo?
That sounds like Bill Clinton.
Huh?
No, that sounded like Bill Clinton.
Yeah, that was a little Bill Clinton in there. I don't know why I did the Bill. The Bill. Of all this. Anyway, so that's why I hate him. But as I told my students this morning, I was talking to my 112 students, and one of them saw me on my Kindle, and she said, "What are you doing?" I said, I'm prepping for teaching Emerson. And they said, she said, "Oh." I said, "I hate him." She said, "Why are you teaching us?" "Because he's important." The reason why he's important is because in all the American, in the history of America, United States, there is no writer that is more important and more influential than Waldo.
And it galls you.
It irritates me because he's a salesman.
But he's also a great writer.
He is a fantastic writer. His words are beautiful.
See, I have to divorce my feelings for him from the work I read.
Yeah.
Because if I think about his life when I'm reading, I get angry.
Well, there's a moment in Self-Reliance where he talks about how the bigot is wrong and that the abolitionist movement is correct and all this. He didn't put his money where his mouth was. And that was the problem. You have cited that problem several times as the problem that you have with him.
Yeah, but he's so good.
He is.
And so I have to forget. So when I read The Poet or The American Scholar or Nature's my favorite.
Nature is amazing. In Nature, he basically lays out transcendentalism.
He does, and I have to put that aside, or I will not enjoy what I read.
Yeah.
And I've been successful so far at putting that aside and realizing the work is not the man.
Yeah.
And that no matter how horrible he is, I mean, the joke: if Mein Kampf were a work of genius, I would get over the fact that Hitler was so horrible. Just to read the book. The problem is Mein Kampf is a clusterfuck. It is a complete train wreck of a book.
Yeah,
I've only read pieces of it, and what I did read, I'm like, this is not well written at all.
No, it's not.
This book is horrible. I mean, you thought he couldn't paint. I mean, he wrote even worse.
Well, okay, so
I've actually seen his paintings. They're not bad.
Let's see. I was going to say, let's talk about his art, because his art. Now he's not a master.
No, but it doesn't suck either.
He doesn't suck either. They're okay. There's a reason why they're not in the Guggenheim.
Yeah, he paints like an impressionist.
Other than the fact that he killed like 7 million Jews, but you know.
Well.
But I mean, it's not George W. I mean,
I've seen his paintings.
They're actually pretty decent.
He's not bad. Of course, he didn't go on to kill 6 million Jews.
Yeah, that's that we know of. Oh. Did I have to? Yes, I did.
No,
what if Hitler was just a misunderstood...
No! Okay, I will be a party to a great many things in the service of this podcast, but...
Okay, so let me just explain that is a joke. That is a running joke with me and Jay. Because I just want to hear him scream, "No!"
And every time I fall for it.
You do.
I can't help it. It's like a reflex. So you're hitting my knee with a
What
hammer.
was it? How did I first do that? I came up to you and I said, let's think about evil and the prospects of evil. Can we actually say that Hitler was evil? Your response, I'll never forget, your response was, yes, I think that's the line.
It is the line. He is the perfect measuring stick for evil. He is it. I mean, even even Stalin doesn't look as bad as Hitler. And Stalin killed a lot of people.
Yes, he did. Way more people.
But he killed his own people. And as
That
Eddie
doesn't mean-
points out, that apparently is different somehow. We're okay with that. It's when you kill people from other countries that you've crossed the line.
Well, to be fair, Stalin didn't experiment on him.
No, he didn't. He just killed them.
He just killed him.
I don't think he wiped out Jews.
No. He wiped out any dissident that he felt was out to get his power.
Or put them in the gulag.
Gulag, or send him off to Siberia.
Yeah.
Ship him off.
Like Solzhenitsyn, who in a letter referred to Stalin as Uncle Joe.
That sounds like something I would say.
And the censors got hold of it, and Stalin was not happy.
Well, of course he wasn't.
Because Solzhenitsyn was already not sanctioned to be a writer by the government, and he was writing anyway.
Wait. You had to be sanctioned to be a writer?
Because you had
Communist, yeah.
you had to write literature that was ultimately Soviet propaganda. And Solzhenitsyn was not doing that.
Yeah.
He refused to write communist propaganda, and that got him into a lot of trouble. And then he wrote this massive tome called The Gulag Archipelago, which I still haven't read, dealing, I think, with his time in the Gulag. I mean,
Well, hence why he's called it the Gulag Archipelago.
It's bad.
I'm going to rearrange the equipment real quick.
Excellent.
Because half of my picture is being blocked. There we go. That's better. Now you can see all of me and my coffin.
What disturbs me about Emerson and Thoreau both is their views on slavery. They obviously don't agree with it,
Yes.
but they
Thoreau-
also aren't abolitionists.
In Economy from Walden, Thoreau talks about slavery and how it's immoral. And they both talk about abolitionism or the abolitionist movement, however, whatever you want to call it. But
thing.
neither one of them get involved.
Well, they're very critical of it
Yeah.
because it means working with others, and they do not play well with others.
So, no, because
It means joining an organization, which they are both against. But how stupid can you be not to realize this is for the greater good? And history is not going to look kindly on you for not being involved. It was stupid to be as critical of slavery as they were, and then to be as critical of abolitionism.
Well,
as a
okay, so
movement.
let's talk about the two big essays about government, which is Emerson's Politics
Yes.
and
Civil Disobedience.
Thoreau's Civil Disobedience, where they both highly promote anarchism.
Yes.
This is a fundamental issue with both of them, and we teach them like they're the greatest thing.
They're great essays.
They're fantastic writers. They're amazing writers. But I don't agree with their political their political views. You know? Because they're wrong.
Oh, about everything. They're wrong about everything. They didn't like the idea of, how do I say this? They didn't like the idea of any kind of hierarchy.
Right.
And that's their problem.
Yeah.
It's the same problem they have with the abolitionist movement. They didn't like the idea of organizations.
Yeah.
Because it requires a certain level of conformity that neither of them is willing to do at all.
Right.
And they view any form of government as being conformist. And one of the things that Emerson says in Self-Reliance, and it's a quote I love, whoso would be a man must be a nonconformist. The entire philosophy is based on not conforming to anything at all.
Only conforming to yourself.
Which is highly misguided.
Yeah.
Highly misguided.
Well, and you start to see roots of the modern aesthetic, or not aesthetic, but roots of the modern philosophy that's going to come at the end of the 19th century, where they take and they revise that individualism to where it's not. The problem is, I'm trying to think of a way to say this. The individual is building on the individual experiences that's getting from that structure, right? Whereas in the postmodern, the individual is informed by a collective, right? But you have to conform to something.
Well, and they did.
Yeah.
That's why they're hypocrites.
Yeah.
Is that they were too eager to conform.
Well, and the other thing is they realized how ridiculous, how they couldn't live the life they were preaching. I think it was this morning you said that Thoreau spoke better to the middle class,
working class,
to the working class,
yes,
than Emerson did, and the reason for that, and my comment to you was the reason for that is because Emerson did not understand that you had to be able to afford the lifestyle he was selling.
Yep. Yeah, you have to have a lot of leisure time to do what he's suggesting.
Yeah. He talks about the farmers constantly, but the farmers that he's talking about could never live the life that he's preaching.
No, and the farmers he's talking about are the farmers that Jefferson was talking about.
Yeah.
It's this agrarian ideal that, quite frankly, never existed.
Yeah.
I mean, Jefferson was not a farmer. Jefferson lived on a farm. Okay? And there were people who farmed, but he was not one of them.
Yeah.
He was in his study writing his books.
About farming.
While his slaves did all the farming.
Or did the farming.
So it's really easy to say these crazy things. It really is easy to say these crazy things as long as someone else is doing the heavy lifting.
Well, yeah, of course.
And that's my problem with
That's aristocratic life. And that's why I said, when you look at Emerson, he's more aristocratic than he is anything else. He wants to be the common man. He can't be the common man because he doesn't understand the common man.
No.
We talked about this at lunch, talking about, different politicians that are around today.
It's actually a good connection, by the way.
It is.
Yep.
But you've got the group, the elite group. I think that's another reason why Emerson is so important, because he establishes a philosophy that the American elite can actually cling to, because they didn't have that before.
No. No.
Jefferson is writing too much anti-aristocracy. Emerson embraces it.
Yes, he does. It gives him the life of luxury to be a nonconformist, even though he was the biggest conformist on the planet.
Well, yeah, because Thoreau, his protege, is the second biggest.
Yeah. I'm
going to go live in the woods in Emerson's backyard.
Hey, Waldo, you mind if I come over for supper tonight? I'm kind of hungry out here. The beans aren't working out.
What is it? Waldo's wife would do Thoreau's laundry?
Yep.
And once a week he would go and have dinner with them.
Yep.
God.
He's not really living the life he purports to live.
It's funny because I reread this Sunday as I was preparing for this, because I wanted to get Thoreau out of the way so I could refresh my mind. Because I haven't taught Emerson, as I noted to you, I haven't taught Emerson in 2 years. So I needed to refresh myself with Emerson. So I knew this was going to be a contentious couple of days.
And it was.
It still was going to be because I got to teach him on Thursday.
It's just going to drag out now.
Oh, it is because he's too important.
He is.
Son of a bitch.
He can't be escaped.
But so anyway, I was reading Economy on on Sunday, and he opens it up.
Thoreau.
Yeah. Why can't we say the same damn name? It's Thoreau.
It's Thoreau.
It's Thoreau.
No. You need to keep going.
It's like you're going to throw the baseball.
No. If you were more thorough, you would know how to pronounce Thoreau's name.
Touche.
Anyway, go ahead. You were reading Economy.
I was reading, and he opens the whole book with the second paragraph of Economy, saying that I lived a mile from everyone else. So we know it's at least a mile to Emerson's house.
He makes a mile sound like it's a really long distance. He doesn't go into the frontier. He would die in the frontier.
What he kills me is in all of this, as we're putting this together between Emerson and Thoreau.
Keep going.
Emerson is arguing. Emerson has this huge argument about, being reliant on yourself, not worrying about money. As the piece I just read, he abhors the dollar.
Yes.
Oh, it's so bad. And yet, Thoreau is on Emerson's land, a mile from his house. Let's come back to that mile in a second. Beside a pond that's on Emerson's land.
Yes.
Okay. So he's a mile from Emerson's house. That's a lot of land. That's a shit ton of land.
Yep.
That's some serious acreage.
And what does he do? He tries to
grow green beans.
And how does that work out?
He is not successful.
Hank can't grow anything. Hank and Waldo. I think it makes it easier to read them when you realize how farcical their lives are.
Yeah.
So you can laugh at it.
Well, yeah, and I think I mentioned this, and I'll keep talking about it because it's the punchline to the whole thing. He gets done at Walden Pond, quote unquote Walden Pond, and where Emerson keeps his shed. And he leaves. And as soon as he gets done with this little experiment, he moves downtown.
Yeah.
Gets an apartment downtown. And goes back to work as a professor.
And why? Because it wasn't for him. If it were for him, he would have stayed.
He would have stayed. He would have been a squatter on Emerson's land.
I think the entire experience was just, he saw it as an opportunity to write a book.
It was an opportunity to write a book, and it was, you know what? And I've thought about this before. There was probably one of those mysterious dinners before all this went down, where Emerson is postulating to Thoreau, and Thoreau is piecing together this idea in his head. And they get into a little heated debate or heated exchange. And Thoreau says, well, we can prove it if I go out and live in the wilderness. And I'll try and live off the land. And I'll see if your theory of self-reliance really is what it is. And I'd be willing to bet that is how it came down.
Through a conversation.
Yep. And Emerson probably said, okay, I'll let you have my backyard. Because the reality is Thoreau could not detach himself, and Emerson knew it. That's why Emerson couldn't detach himself.
Yeah.
I abhor the dollar, my thousands of acres. Give me another one.
So what do we do with them now? What is their value now?
Their value is still the same value that it's always been. I mean,
it's a big clothing store.
One of my favorite moments of his books, go back to nature. The first big one, right? I mean, this passage. At the gates of the forest, the surprised man of the world is forced to leave his city estimates of great and small, wise and foolish. The knapsack of custom falls off his back with the first step he makes into these precincts. Here is sanctity which shames our religions, and reality which discredits our heroes. Here we find nature to be the circumstance which dwarfs every other circumstance and judges like a god all men that come to her. That's what we do with them. Yeah, I mean, it's here. No history or church or state is interpolated. Excuse me. It's hyphenated. That's why I was struggling with it.
It's
interpolated on the divine sky and the immortal year. How easily we might walk onward into the opening landscape, absorbed by new pictures and by thoughts fast succeeding each other, until by degrees the recollection of home was crowded out of the mind, all memory obliterated by the tyranny of the present, and we were led in triumph by nature. If you want to know. If you want to know what to do with them, read them.
But are they at all applicable?
Yes. Except for politics and civil disobedience. Because the biggest problem I have with civil disobedience is not the anarchy. It's... I'll read it. I'll read you my problem with civil disobedience. Because I've always loved civil disobedience.
It's a great essay.
It is. I mean, they're all great essays.
Bastards.
God bless. I know. Sons of bitches.
If they had actually practiced what they preached.
I know. It would have been wonderful. Bull. Yes, there is annotations in this book because I put them in there on the duty of civil disobedience.
Or resistance to civil government.
Yeah. But it is not less necessary for this, for the people must have some complicated machinery or other, and hear its din to satisfy that idea of government which they have. Governments show thus how successfully men can be imposed on, even impose on themselves for their own advantage. It is excellent, we must all allow, yet this government never of itself furthered any enterprise, but by the alacrity with which it got out of its way. It does not keep the country free, it does not sell the West, it does not educate. The character inherent in the American people has done all that has been accomplished, and it would have done somewhat more if the government had not sometimes got in its way. For government is an expedient by which men would fain succeed in letting one another alone. And as has been said, when it is most expedient, the governed are most let alone by it. Trade and commerce, if they were not made of India rubber, would never manage to bounce over obstacles which legislators are continually putting in their way. And if one were to judge these men wholly by the effects of their actions and not partly by their intentions, they would deserve to be classed and punished with those mischievous persons who put obstructions on the railroads. All right. So my problem is not... Okay, so let me explain what I agree with, and then I'll tell you why I got a problem with the same thing that I agree with. He says that... Yet this government never of itself furthered any enterprise, but by alacrity with which it got out of its way. It, talking about the government, does not keep the country free. It does not settle the West. It does not educate. And what he's saying is that the government of the United States does not do all these individual accomplishments, but the individuals of the United States do. Well, that is true, and I agree with that. However... What he fails to mention in that, when he says it does not conquer the West, no, it does not. But it pays for it, and you helped conquer it.
Yep.
It does not educate. That is true, but it pays for it, and you choose what will and will not be taught.
Yep.
Right? And so, and this is the problem that I have with his philosophy. He's absolutely right. At the same time, he's betraying And he's becoming a hypocrite for his own sake, saying that every person is equal. But the problem is that all the thing he points to, all the different moments that he points to in that, they were all oppressive for somebody.
Just not him.
Just not him. And that is the problem I have with him. And I know that's dancing on the critical race theory line, and I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is, if he were truly what he says he is, he would realize that, and he would mention that.
I don't think he saw it.
Of course he did. He's looking through an Emerson lens. He's getting all this from Emerson. Because remember, Emerson wrote Politics before Civil Disobedience.
Yeah, that's true.
And Emerson was his professor. Old Hank was his lackey.
Yes. And I love them both. I do. I would say they're the most. I would say that you see their warts and blemishes in those essays.
Yeah.
Because it almost starts to sound like they're selfish.
Mm-hmm.
Me. And
Emerson
screw everybody
promotes
else.
being selfish.
Yeah.
He promotes it. Focus on yourself. Everything else be damned.
Yeah, see, no.
Yeah.
As much as I admire their work, my philosophy is rather different. You're a part of this human family, and as a result, your job is to take care of those around you.
Yes.
And if that means creating organizations and institutions that'll do that, then damn it, that's what we do.
So
They would never allow for that.
it's my lecture notes.
I view them as a little bit dangerous.
A little bit.
But kids love them.
Well, yeah. As we noted this morning, Emerson writes philosophical one-liners all over the place.
Yeah.
Every sentence is a philosophical one-liner. You can take it and build. I mean, if I see another plaque with an Emerson quote, I'm going to scream because they're everywhere.
Yep.
All right, so these are my lecture notes for Transcendentalism. People and nature are inherently good. So that's the core belief. People and nature are inherently good. Society and industry have corrupted the individual and made them evil. They also questioned organized government in favor of quote-unquote true democracy, is what you called this morning the Athenian democracy, which doesn't work.
No.
Because if it did, Athens would still be around.
But it's what they advocate for.
Yes. So, self-reliance and independence transcend society and culture, and then they celebrate diversity in, it looks like in a bag, but I think I think what I tried to write there was celebrate diversity in each being, whether it's a being from nature or a being like a human being.
Yes.
But within each individual being is diversity and individuality, and creating that and sustaining that transcends society and culture. So you put yourself above society and culture. Society and culture then doesn't have the influence it's supposed to have on you. That's what they're talking about. The problem is, when you do that, you break down the community. And that's why those stupid utopian forms that Emerson propagated didn't work.
My favorite part.
And that's the beauty of the Blythedale Romance, when Hawthorne goes and lives on one of them and says, this is stupid.
Well, there's always going to be a leader.
Yeah.
Someone will always emerge, as however well-meaning they are.
And to be fair, he was trying to get with Margaret Fuller the whole time, and she kept denying it. But, that's neither here nor there.
Who, Hawthorne?
Yeah.
I didn't know that part. Oh my God.
Yeah, the romance at the core of the Blythedale Romance
Is them.
It's them. It's him and her.
But she had no.
Want anything to do with him. It pissed him off. But, I think the greatest critique comes in Dimsdale. Dimsdale is Hawthorne telling Emerson, you're wrong. Because if people were inherently good, and this is the whole argument about Dimsdale, if people were inherently good, he would not have put her in the position of having to confess for him. And that's why she turns him down. What Hawthorne is ultimately saying with that is somebody outside this idea of being inherently good or bad understands also that you have to own your own sins.
Yeah.
Emerson's little thing about the dollar, that's so fake.
It is.
Because he's not owning the sin.
No.
I abhor it. He didn't say, I turn it down. He admits, I take it from time to time. I give to these charities from time to time. He doesn't say, I have completely divorced myself from money. Because if he had, he can't. Because if he does, then Thoreau doesn't have a book to write.
There you go.
And see, where I dislike Emerson and Thoreau is where I admire Hawthorne.
Yeah.
Because Hawthorne had it figured out.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't an idealist, unlike them. So he was able to see what human beings really were capable of.
Yeah.
And he spends an entire career writing about what human beings are capable of.
The Custom House, he talks about the political exchange, and he's very open about his politics. And that puts him, to me, that puts him above Emerson and Thoreau.
Well, he wasn't a hypocrite.
No. No. The only real crime that Hawthorne had was, this reader is a metaphor.
That in the Blithedale Romance?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, and I think
that's a shot at Emerson too.
Yeah, this isn't. Yeah, I think he was being facetious. Obviously, this. Because is it actually a metaphor or a symbol, or is he just telling us it is?
Well, I think what he's doing is, like I said, that's a shot at Emerson too. And what he's doing is he's telling Emerson, it's like, this is not that hard. People are not as dumb as you think they are. Because that's the other thing about the American scholar. He talks about the intellectual. He talks about how the intellectual is on a separate plane from the working man. He creates that mythology that the intellect is higher. But then he also admits that the intellect doesn't understand the workings of the working, or the mechanics of the working man, because the intellect doesn't have to do that.
No.
They observe. They watch the working man. They don't actually physically engage with it. And what he tries to do is he tries to do kind of what, who wrote City Upon a Hill?
That's Winthrop.
Winthrop. He tries to do what Winthrop does when he divides the classes. He says the rich and the poor have to work together, but they can't be the same.
Yeah.
Right? They can't be on equal footing. It's what Emerson tries to do. It's a very puritanical ideal. He tries to say that, you have to have the intellect and the working man separate, and that the intellect doesn't know how the working man actually operates, but that's okay because he gets to observe him and explain him. Well, who's he explaining him to? The working man? No.
Other middle class people.
Yeah. So what is the point? He's doing what the English department has done for 30 years now. He's justifying something that doesn't have to be justified.
That's right.
Then he can't be justified.
No.
Why do we need intellects? Because they are the thinkers, okay? But when we try to justify the mechanics of being the thinker, there's no real justification for it. We just know we have to have somebody watching to make sure that we don't screw up.
Yeah, well, a good intellectual sees the world in a new way. Yeah. In a way that maybe no one's seen it before. And that's where the revolution can happen.
Yeah.
And so that's Jefferson.
Yeah.
Is that he saw the world in a new way.
It's not just him, it's Adams, it's Madison.
Adams. It's all of them.
Yeah.
They saw the world in a new way. And it was the new way they saw the world that allowed for the revolution. That's probably the benefit of the intellectual, is the intellectual at their best, his or her best, is able to see the world in a way no one has before, and then change the minds and the hearts of everybody else.
Yeah.
And say, we've been doing it all wrong. And this is maybe the way we should approach it from now on.
And then you let the workers engineer it.
That's right.
That's it.
And so I think Emerson's trying to do that, in that he does say, we've been doing it all wrong.
Yeah.
He's very good at diagnosing.
Yeah.
He's even
His solutions
good.
are not good.
No, I mean, well, he's good at telling us what we should start to think about. We should be self-reliant.
Yeah.
I don't know of anyone who would disagree with that. We should challenge government. I don't know anyone who would disagree with that. But to the degree they're suggesting,
No.
it can't work.
Yeah. There has to be some kind of balance.
And there is no balance with them.
No.
That's their biggest failure. Aside from looking really bad about abolitionism,
Yeah.
there's a lack of balance. They do not allow for any exceptions to the rule. They are at their core absolutist. It is one way or the other. You can't have. There's no middle ground. There's nothing. Either you do this thing or you don't do this thing.
Yeah.
Either government works or it fails. Is it actually that simple? Anyone who lives in the world knows it's more complicated than that.
Yeah.
And that's my problem with them.
Yeah, they're out of touch.
They are. Well, it's easy to be.
And that's the thing with Walden. It's a great theory.
Yeah.
It's a great idea.
Yep.
But it's out of touch. He doesn't actually accomplish what he sets out to accomplish.
No. Nonetheless, my admiration is pretty strong, but not for. Okay. So there are parts of civil disobedience I like. I like his critique of not wanting to pay taxes to send someone to war.
Yeah.
I admire that.
Yeah. The anti-war portion of it is
Oh my God,
fantastic.
it's wonderful.
He talks about them becoming part of a machine.
That's right.
This inhuman machine.
That's right. This magazine of a gun or something like that. And I get it. I do. And I understand not wanting to pay taxes to forward the war effort.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that's only one small piece of a larger essay that has serious problems.
Yeah.
Having said that, someone like Martin Luther King Jr. would say he could never have done what he did without it.
Yeah.
Gandhi could never have done what he did without it. And neither of them really believed that government was evil. They just wanted government to change.
Yeah.
Whereas Emerson and Thoreau want to eradicate government
Yeah.
entirely, and to eradicate society as we know it. And on a certain level, I am sympathetic with that too, because society has a lot of problems.
Yes, it does.
And his diagnosis of society is dead on. That's what they're good at. They're good at diagnosing things. They are not good necessarily at creating solutions that are viable. But they don't have to create viable solutions. They're intellectuals.
Yeah.
They're safe. They're not suffering from this.
One of the things that that fascinated me, that I never really paid attention to, and I picked up on this in Whitman, when Whitman writes the stanza in Song of Myself where he says, where he talks about the kid coming up, and he says, what is grass? And so he goes into this long, really deep discussion about how we are the ground, and the ground is us, and we are connected, which is very, very romantic. I mean, that is romanticism 101 right there, that tie, right? But when I was reading Emerson earlier, and I think it's in the Americas. It may be in Self-Reliance. I can't remember, but it's in one of the essays where he talks about these ideas. You can see Darwin come out of.
Yeah.
Where he's talking about, and so they were thinking about this 30 years before Darwin. They were talking about this philosophically. and seeing how science has started to open up a little bit. And of course, Darwin confirms it with the origin of species. But I found that fascinating that Emerson is finding all these things by looking at nature. Something that the fathers of the Enlightenment did not see. And I think that's what when Wordsworth sees the revolution fail, the French Revolution, he comes back. He sits in that apartment and drinks for 6 months, and then comes out of it. But I think when he writes Tintern Abbey, he's figuring that out. He's starting to see the connection between man and nature that the Enlightenment did not see.
Yeah.
And Emerson picks up on that. And of course, transcendentalism is a confirmation of all that. I don't know where I was going with that, but I thought it was really fascinating because you read it and you can see Darwin coming.
I think Wordsworth does it better than Emerson. If for no other reason, Wordsworth doesn't want to destroy government.
Wordsworth gave birth to this. He did. Wordsworth's shit.
He did, and he sees that a connection has, and so while Emerson and Thoreau are attacking government, Wordsworth is attacking industry.
Yeah.
The difference is Wordsworth is right.
Yeah.
Emerson and Thoreau are wrong.
Yeah.
And it's not like Wordsworth didn't go off the deep end. He did. He became, he had 10 great years as a poet and then became a deeply conservative, pro-monarch kind of poet, which is just wretched.
Well, look at what happened. His little buddy abandoned him for heroin in Germany.
I know. That'll change a man.
That'll change a man. German philosophy has a very strong power.
I mean, but he gets old and he gets curmudgeonly and he starts writing this kind of rule Britannia kind of poetry that's just not particularly good. I mean, but his early
God
stuff.
save the Queen.
Yeah.
A fascist regime. She's married to a moron.
I love that song.
I do too.
But so I think had Emerson and Thoreau really gone after industry instead, it would have made more sense.
Well, I think Thoreau touches on it. Emerson talks about it, but Emerson is again more concerned with government regulation
and
of
church
the individual
and any organization.
Any organization, yeah, because the religion, he goes after the religious. He was part of the Unitarians, right?
He was going to be a Unitarian minister.
Yeah.
That's what his family wanted him to be.
And then he founded Transcendentalism.
Even though now, if you were to talk to anyone who's a part of the Unitarian Universalist Church, they would say that Emerson is one of their most important thinkers. Because of the Obersoul, which is one of his greatest refinements. That's probably the coolest thing. And it completely undermines everything he says. Because he's constantly focused on the individual. But then he says, oh, but wait. We're all connected by the same soul. Now do your own thing.
Yeah. Well, there's a moment in Self-Reliance where he talks about Jesus Christ. And he's talking about how whole institutions are born out of the actions of one man.
Yes.
And he talks about Caesar, he talks about Jesus, he talks about Moses, Socrates, yeah. He talks about a whole list of them, but he's Jesus. He says his sacrifice informed an entire culture. I'm like, wow. Okay there, Waldo.
Well, and he also talks about how men who stand outside of society are punished by society.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Jesus was punished for it.
Yeah.
And Socrates.
And Caesar.
And Caesar.
He was assassinated. Moses. He was not allowed to go into the promised land.
That's right. People who suffer because they refuse to follow the whims of society.
Yeah.
Again, I like that. I do.
I agree with it.
It's wonderful.
He's wrong.
He's wrong. I think, and that's... So
he was a good man. He was a family man.
It's also wrong.
Wrong.
I have a problem... So, yes, he writes well. But does that make it? I don't know. He writes really well, but is he writing propaganda
Emerson?
for another cause? Because I think it's really easy to get wooed into thinking because it sounds good, it must be true, and I find that very dangerous. It sounds really good.
So what you're asking is there a possibility that he was writing propaganda? Well, let's step back for a second.
I mean, granted, he's not writing it for any particular institution.
So but is he? Okay, so let's step back. Let's tell the quick story. I'm going to give the shortened history of Emerson. Okay, he's born to a wealthy family. His wealthy family sends him to Harvard. His third year there, right before his fourth and final year, they tell him, hey, why don't you go and travel Europe before you do your final year in school? So Emerson does just that. He goes, he travels Italy, France, Germany. He ends up in England, where he meets this old man named William, well, he wasn't old, but he meets William Wordsworth. And Wordsworth has just given us lyrical ballads, right? And he sits down and he tells Emerson all these different philosophical ideas about romanticism, and basically hands romanticism to Emerson. It says, go forth and conquer. So Emerson hops back across the Atlantic, brings romanticism to America, and says, wait a minute, we need to tweak it. We're going to tweak it just a little bit. So he gets a little group together. He says, come on, guys, let's talk. They sit down, they chit-chat. Boom, they give birth to Transcendentalism. His writing, if you look at everything that happens after he gets back from meetings with Wordsworth, is built to construct and sustain Transcendentalism. Nature is the first big essay, and what does nature do? It lays everything out. This is Transcendentalism. When you look at the American Scholar, when you look at politics, when you look at self-reliance, there we go. I was tripping there for a second.
Nature.
Poetics. All the ones that come after nature, right? Look at all the major ones that come after nature. What are they doing? All they're doing is they're taking bits of nature and they're actually adding to it, expanding it, exploring it more, right? Because everything comes back to nature. When we look at the American Scholar, the first point he makes is he says the American Scholar must be in touch with nature. We look at self-reliance. The first thing he talks about is how do you, the individual, connect with nature? Through your own self-reliance, your own self-will, right? Everything comes back to nature. And so nature is like the ultimate document. And then all the other essays after that, all the major ones, are offshoots of nature where it's just expanding on those ideas within that essay. So the question is it propaganda? No. But is he writing for something? Yes. He's writing to establish and maintain Transcendentalism.
But so a better question, is his really beautiful writing style hiding really bad ideas? Is his really beautiful writing style covering up, I feel like I can talk better now, is covering up some really shady ideas? Right. Because, and I keep coming back to his problem with the abolitionist movement for a reason.
Yeah.
I was trying to be quiet earlier, but now I'm just going to let it go.
I don't care if I'm quiet or not. I'm just not going to smoke where it blows right in their faces.
I feel like I feel like the writing style. I think you say he's a snake oil salesman.
Yeah.
I think there's also something of the hypnotist in him too. The mesmeric kind of. Medium kind of person who distracts you with beautiful language, but in reality is saying some fairly unsavory things.
Right.
Because he has this constellation of really good ideas that cover up things like, oh, by the way, fuck the abolitionist movement.
Yeah.
Are you serious? Fuck the poor?
Yeah.
Are you serious? Because he says that.
Yeah.
He says it. And we get caught up on the tide of his lyrical language, which is breathtaking.
Mm-hmm.
But if you strip all of that away and you just present his ideas without the beautiful language, what would we think of it? Would we still like it if he weren't so amazing at putting sentences together?
So
I don't think the answer is yes to that.
The difference between him and Jefferson, when you talk about the great philosophers, this is the difference between Notes on the State of Virginia and Emerson's essays. In Notes of the State of Virginia, or Notes on the State of Virginia, Jefferson is having an intellectual moral conflict with himself.
Which makes it a great book.
It does, because on one page he's saying that slavery is horrid. He's saying that that slavery is the one thing that God is going to punish us all for. On the next page, he's talking about how we cannot live without it, that this institution keeps us going. And he's battling those two separate ideas, and he doesn't understand how to get there. Because, as I mentioned to my students, at the time that he's writing all this, our ideas of humanity are a product of hundreds of years of this line of thought. He's at the beginning of that. He's one of the earliest ones to come to that realization. Franklin comes to it faster, and Franklin comes through it with a clearer vision, because Franklin is not the aristocrat. Jefferson is, and Jefferson is trying to reconcile that aristocracy. Fast forward to Emerson. What makes Emerson different? Emerson doesn't try to reconcile the aristocracy.
No.
He's an elitist from the word go. He wants to defend that elitism by covering it with this idea that anybody can do what I'm talking about. And you can't. Even his elite little buddy couldn't do it.
I think as a stark contrast, we may want to talk about, before we finish, talk about Whitman.
Yeah.
Because Whitman, as much as we talk about how Emerson shaped Whitman, but Whitman diverges from Emerson in some pretty exciting ways.
Mm-hmm.
Namely, he reminds you that we are all connected. And Emerson says that,
Yeah.
but Emerson makes it happen.
So, you mean Whitman?
Sorry, Whitman makes that happen.
So here's the thing. So we talk about, okay, so students ask, when I tell students that, like, of all the American writers, Emerson's the one. Emerson, that's it. That's the American writer, right? And the reason for that is because, as I mentioned before, you either love him or you hate him. It's one or the other. And you're going to be influenced by him in one of those two ways. And we see that with the two other biggest writers in the 19th century. Well, three, if you count Melville. We'll come to Melville in a minute. Because he influences Melville through Hawthorne.
He does.
But the two big ones, Hawthorne and Whitman, Hawthorne is writing against Emerson. Whitman is writing with Emerson's philosophy.
And then advancing it.
But
he jettisons the bullshit in Emerson. He jettisons it.
So here's the thing. So I'll tell the thing that I told you this morning. Because it's just so fucking funny. So Emerson comes to Whitman goes to Emerson and says, I really want to write that. Emerson said, well, then dig deep and talk about nature, and here's all the things. He gives him the whole philosophy of transcendental, and Whitman's like, all right. And so he writes the poem and says, I'm naked and gay. And Emerson says, oh, too far, buddy.
Well, Emerson admired the first edition of Leaves of Grass. Mm. It's the second edition. Mm-hmm. The third edition, Emerson starts to say, and it's because, and this is you're talking about the hypocrisy of Emerson. Mm-hmm. He is so caught up in the mores of his time, he can't get his head around homosexuality.
Yeah.
If he were truly self-reliant,
mm-hmm.
he wouldn't allow that to get in the way.
Well, okay, and so let's bring in my favorite guy, pre-anti-Semitism, Mr. Pound.
Oh, Jesus.
Because when Pound makes his call for the Renaissance, where does he start? He does not start with Emerson.
No.
He starts with Whitman.
And he should. Because Whitman doesn't screw up. For one, okay, so Whitman lived the life that he preached. Mm-hmm. He did exactly what he said you should do.
Yep.
which is why he's my hero.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why, for me, there's a poet named J.D. McClatchy. I got a chance to spend some time with him. He's a great man.
Mm-hmm.
Sandy is the name he goes by with his friends. But
yeah.
Someone asked him what he thought of Walt Whitman's poetry, and he startled us. He's like, "Whitman's not a poet. Wait, Whitman didn't write poetry." I'm like, what? He said, "Whitman wrote American scripture."
Well, Pound says, if when you're here, it's easy to overlook Whitman because you breathe Whitman here, and it's the same air.
Yes.
But when you go away, he says, it's when you're cut off from America, get Whitman out.
Yes. Because
that's America. It's the essence.
We disagree on it, but I think Whitman's it.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is that Pound also, there's two writers that Pound focuses on when he makes the call to the Renaissance. It's Whitman and James.
Yeah.
It's not Emerson.
No.
In fact, he doesn't even mention Emerson.
No.
He doesn't mention Thoreau. Now, to be fair, he doesn't mention Hawthorne or Melville or Twain. I mean, it's Hemingway that says, guys, we need to pay attention to this old white guy from the Mississippi Delta. Because he's kind of important.
He might matter at some point.
He might matter, yeah. What does he say? Every American writer wants to write the great American novel. And that novel is Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain.
It is.
And of course, that was pre-Gatsby. It was before Fitz gave us Gatsby.
And then it became Gatsby.
And it became Gatsby. But no, I think, but I do, going back to, and Melville, the thing about Melville is that he takes the idea of man and nature working together, and he really expounds on that.
Yes.
And shows how every time man betrays nature, nature bites back.
Yes.
Every time.
Quite literally in the case of Moby Dick.
Yes. Well, even look at Typee,
yeah.
right? So, I mean, it's...
Melville's my hero.
I know.
Oh, he's so good. He's so good.
I enjoy him when I need a good nap.
Well, okay. I understand the lack of patience for Moby Dick. There's an entire chapter on clam chowder.
Well, yeah.
Okay. There's a chapter on tattoos.
To be fair, going back to James, it's like, everybody hates to read James, but Pound was right about one thing, and Pound even admits that he's so boring. This man is boring. But he hits on one thing that James was the expert at and that we need to copy. And that was that James knew the idiosyncrasies of the American individual better than anybody else.
Yes.
And he understood those mechanics better than anybody else.
Yes.
And that's why he's important. And what's interesting is when Pound talks about the American essence, he talks about three things. He talks about the skyscrapers because he says that is what America's good at. America's good at taking old ideas and using ingenuity to incorporate them into life now and making them better. And that is a genius part of America. And then he talks about Whitman and James. What's funny is he leaves Whitman for the end. The end of that essay is all about Whitman. And he hated Whitman. And a pact is you want to talk about, so you love the cantos, and that's great. I can't stand the cantos. The cantos gives me a migraine. But, but a pact, when he talks about, my pig-headed father.
Yes.
And he talks about how you couldn't stand him. But then he realizes it was you who broke the new wood. Now it's time for carving.
Yeah.
I get it now. I don't like it, but I see it.
Yep.
It's kind of like my relationship with Robert Frost. I don't get it, but I see it.
Well, what makes Whitman so
like
powerful is he's using an American language.
Yeah.
That until him had never been done before.
Which Twain picks up on.
Yes.
Twain gives us vernacular.
Yes.
It shows us how to actually talk American.
And that's Whitman. I mean, Whitman doesn't put on airs.
No.
At all. And
Whitman would not have been impactful if it had been in verse, in regular structured verse.
No, we would.
The fact that it was free verse makes it even more important.
Yeah. Well, it sprawls.
Yeah.
Like the prairies. I can't remember what scholar had made that comparison.
I don't know, but Frederick Jackson Turner's frontier thesis fits perfect with all of it.
Yes.
that idea of constantly reaching for something new. And that's what Whitman's doing the whole time, reaching for something new, giving us what we know, giving us who we are, and reaching for something new, a new understanding of what we are.
Yeah. He doesn't. But again, he tosses Emerson's bad ideas over the side of the boat.
Yeah.
And preserves the best of it.
Yeah.
And I think he's also channeling Wordsworth, and not through Emerson either. I think he's channeling Wordsworth. Period.
I think, and I can't believe you haven't said anything about him yet. I think they're channeling him and Blake.
I think if you look at Blake's long lines, it would be hard not to think of Whitman looking at Blake.
I think they all are.
You have to.
Yeah.
You have to.
So it's just.
I love Blake.
Yeah.
Oh, he's so good.
I mean, look at Yeats. When Yeats comes in on the back end of all of this.
Yep.
And there's clearly a lot of Wordsworth, and there's clearly a lot of Blake, and there's clearly Coleridge.
Yep.
And you're also getting like hints of oh God, who was the sublime poet?
Which one?
Shelley's husband.
Percy?
Yeah, Percy Shelley. All of them.
He was also an anarchist.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, if you look at Yeats and his style, you're seeing he's the culmination of all the romantics, even the Victorians. I mean, it's insane. 3 movements in his life.
It's incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah.
There's a reason I regard him as, in the English language, if we take Shakespeare out of the conversation.
If we take him out of I was getting ready to say, but at the same time, like, here's the thing. Okay. So, like, here's God, which is Shakespeare.
Yeah.
And right underneath him is the Trinity, and that's Yeats. Yeats is, as far as just strictly poets, oh, Yeats is best. There's no arguing that.
He's tops.
He is.
I was talking to a friend of mine about this. It wasn't about Yeats. It was about somebody else, and I can't remember the name of the poet that saved my life. But he's like, it's very rare for a poet to change his voice.
Yeah.
Yeats did.
Yeah. 3 times.
3 times.
But the most impressive part is Pound getting a hold of him and reinventing him, and the 3rd movement, in my opinion, is his best poetry. After Pound gets a hold of it.
Yeah. And it's all, but that's the thing is with Yeats, it's all good.
Yeah.
The stuff from, if you had only read the stuff from the 90s, the 1890s.
Was it Auden that wrote the
yes. In Memoriam to W.B. Yeats.
Where he did
the 3 different movements.
Yeah.
One of my favorite lines from all of English poetry comes from that poem.
Yeah.
The words of a dead man are modified in the guts of the living. Oh God! And Auden's up there too.
Oh God!
Because Auden changed his voice.
Yeah. We should be teaching him in American Lit.
We should be.
If we're going to teach Eliot, we need to.
He moved here.
Didn't he become a citizen?
Yes.
I mean, we teach Pound.
We do, but to be fair, if you read Auden, you would never think, no, that's an American poet. I mean, to be fair, you would never say the same about Eliot either.
It's true.
And I mean, I still have a problem regarding Eliot as an American poet.
Birthright.
Yeah, but that's about it. I mean, he's as British as you can get.
Well, and that's the thing. All the poetry is dealing with European problems, not American problems. I mean, The Wasteland is a European poem.
It is. It is.
It's not even a British poem. It's a poem for Europe.
If you want to read American poets, real American poets, you got to read Wallace Stevens, Marion Moore, and you've got to read Williams. I mean, you can't. You want to read.
I was waiting. I was like, at some point, he's going to bring up.
You're talking about American, because Eliot's not writing in an American vernacular at all. Whereas Williams comes up with these lines like, "The pure products of America go crazy." How much more American can you get? And then Langston Hughes, who's writing this aside from channeling jazz, is writing a dialect you would never mistake from anywhere else in the world.
Exactly, and that is why I say over and over and over, and I know you disagree with me.
Because I think it's Whitman.
He's our greatest American poet. I think Langston Hughes is the voice of American poetry.
He's great.
He is.
He is great. Can't
Whitman.
read his own work worth a damn.
We can't read any work worth a damn. He's a terrible reader.
He's awful.
Not that he couldn't read. He could read just fine.
But not
He
out
just
loud.
couldn't- Yeah, he couldn't enunciate well.
No.
But then again, you get Eliot, who's overdramatic.
Pound is great. Pound like rolls his R's and shit.
Oh, you want to talk about an elitist?
Yes.
Oh,
The best reader of his own work
yeah,
is Dylan Thomas.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Nobody.
Well, Cummings.
Cummings is hilarious.
I know.
And he's also deeply entrenched in American vernacular.
Yeah. Well, anyone lived in anyhow town is just, and they never get it.
No, they don't.
They're like, I'm like, who's anyone? Capitalism. They always go back to capitalism. And I'm like,
It's
why
easy.
are you going to capitalism? What is the red wheelbarrow about?
Capitalism. Someone in high school told them that's the answer to everything.
Everything.
Capitalism.
Yeah, capitalism. No,
It really isn't.
No, it's not.
It's just not. You're just wrong.
But yeah, so Emerson, yeah, good. I think that's good. We're in an hour and 12.
Whoa.
So
Longer than most.
yeah, well, I was thinking that we could get at least 45 minutes out of this.
When I had that moment of realization that, oh my God, is it maybe Emerson is a horrible human being, and truly not just a hypocrite, but maybe he's horrible.
Yeah, maybe he's just a bad man.
I mean,
He's an elitist. There's no getting around it. Well, I will tell you this. I still have plenty of battery left, so I'll check the video afterwards. We may have video for this, we may not. I don't know. We'll find out afterwards.
oh God.
But we've got the audio. That's what really matters. So, yeah, this may be the better way to do this.
With the camera?
Yeah. So now I don't have to rip it and edit it. All right. Yeah, the picture looks much better. All right, I'm the barber. That's Dr. J. We'll see y'all next time.
Now it's time for Dr. J.